Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Sorta Bossy. I'm your host, Adrienne Dorson, and I'm here by myself again, and I am building up so much more courage each time. I know that I've been doing this for a really long time, but for some reason, I guess over the years, the more that I like podcast with other people, the less that I podcast solo, the harder it becomes to podcast solo. So I'm building the muscle again, right? Just like with everything, you have to build that muscle back up. And I'm super excited to do it because honestly, it's super convenient to podcast solo. I don't have to think about anyone else's schedule except for mine. And sometimes I just want to go on a rant and there's no space for someone else to add to this conversation right now. There's always space, but sometimes it's nice to just say what you want to say and then the episode is over. So I'm coming off the heels of being in New York City for a quick 36 hours. And I was in New York because I got invited by a woman I met at a dinner in Boston, actually, to go and speak about building your business with the intent to exit your business, right? So the woman, her name is Alicia Pennington. I will have her on the podcast at some point in the future. But she is an exited founder and her whole focus is around the identity piece of exiting the business and how that all kind of comes up for you when you sell the business around like, well, who am I without this business? And really that there's a huge exit gap for women and that a big part of that is because of our identity and our attachment to the thing, right? To the business. And so she wanted me to come speak at New York Tech Week. So we ran a session at New York Tech Week. And my piece of that conversation of building to exit was all around the operation side, like really thinking about how do we actually remove owner dependency so that the business is valuable when you're thinking about the sale and when you're talking to buyers, right? Buyers do not want to buy something. Typically, investors, buyers, whoever it is, they don't want to buy something that is just a job for them, especially if they're not skilled in the same expertise as you. It just really limits your ability to sell the business if everything is dependent on you. And then we also had a third co-host. Her name was Alexis Allen, and she spoke to the financial side. So she's a wealth advisor, does wealth management, certified exit planning, and really thinking about the financials and the things that you need to do in preparation for a sale way before you ever sell it to make the business be worth as much as humanly possible on your way out, right? And so it was these three different pieces hosted inside of that one holistic conversation. And I loved this room so much and this conversation so much because it's something that we're not having often enough. And we're definitely not having it early enough, right? Like we need to be thinking about the exit years in advance of actually doing it, right? And most of us are not, especially most female founders are not. And so coming back from this trip, like this is something that I've been talking about, but am going to continue talking about, and I'm going to be even louder about it and do more conversations and host more sessions and trainings and rooms where we can have these discussions. Because as founders, you should be thinking about what is the path. What is the vision? You should be thinking about that from the very beginning. But oftentimes in the very beginning, even in the first few years, 5 years, 10 years, we're just thinking about growth, revenue. How do we make enough money to live, to sell this thing? How do we make sure this product is viable? How do we make sure that we're paying our people? Like we're so involved just in the default day-to-day of getting this thing off the ground and making sure it has legs and making sure it supports us, which I totally understand, that we often fail to think about what is my long-term plan for this thing, right? And when I use the term exit, I'll use air quotes if you're watching me on video. If you're not, then know that I'm using air quotes. Exit. In many different, like, to me, an exit has many different variations, right? An exit is not just a sale. I have a post that you can go to my Instagram and look at. I posted it when this airs this week, where we talk about the 24 different types of exits. And there's probably even more than that, but there are so many different ways to, quote unquote, exit your business, right? And most women have only heard of one. You're only thinking, oh, I don't want to exit, or I don't want to sell. And so then you completely remove that from your mindset when some of the ways that we could exit don't even involve selling the business. Some of them don't even involve leaving the business, but they all really require this foundational work that we do, right? So when we hear the term exit, like, we're only picturing one thing. We're picturing the sale, there's a buyer, and I'm completely walking away from it. But that's not the full menu, right? And so every exit falls into one of these 4 categories that I talk about. And I'm going to be talking about this in depth on a training. It's actually happening today, live today. So if you're a live listener, if you're someone that listens to the podcast the day it comes out, then you can still join us for the live session. Just go to level11leaders.com/OOO for out of office. Okay. Or go in the show notes and you will find the link, level11leaders.com/OOO. And I'm going to be talking about these 4 different types of exits. If you can't make it live, you can still sign up. If you're listening to this a week later, months later, whatever, you can still sign up for the replay. Okay. I still want you to do that because this is a conversation you still need to hear about what these 4 different exits are and what your options are within these exits and which one really matches your vision and your life goals and your family planning and, the lifestyle that you want to live and the money that you want to make and the wealth that you want to create. All of these things are variables and factors that will help you decide which of these exits for me. And then what do I need to do to prepare for the right type of exit, right? So again, there are 4 different categories of exits. And then there's 24 different ways within those 4 categories that you could position and exit the business, right? So the first category that I talk about is scaling the business. There are multiple different ways to exit the business so that it can actually scale, right? You cannot scale your business if it is entirely dependent on you. We have to remove owner dependency for every single one of these exits, okay? And so it's about figuring out which exit do I actually want, and then how do I properly prepare my business for that, right? So number 1 category, scale. Number 2, sell, right? And there's 10 different ways that you could sell your business or transfer your business for money. There's 4 different ways you could scale it. The third category is step away. Do I want to just step away from the business, right? And this is where you're keeping the business, but you're not going to be running it yourself. You're not going to be running the day-to-day. And there's 5 different ways that you could step away from the business that I have thought of. Again, there might be more. And then the 4th category of stepping away or exiting the business is secession planning, right? There are 5 different ways that you could pass on the business, different variations of secession. But altogether, between scaling, selling, stepping away, or secession planning, there's 24 different versions of an exit that you could be thinking of for the future of the business. And we need to know this and understand it so that we can reverse engineer the way that we show up every day, the way that we set up systems, the way that we set up a team, the way that we set up the financials, the way that we pay ourselves, the way that we show up every day, the way that we start to lead differently. So many different ways that you need to intentionally understand, okay, if I'm doing this, it's going to look slightly different than this, right? And you need to be thinking about this not when you're ready to exit, but years in advance, right? So that we can actually properly reverse engineer it, right? Like for scaling your business, it could take 3 to 10 years of intentional infrastructure building to get to the point where you're ready to actually scale it. For selling it, it could take 3 to 5 years to be doing the due diligence to be ready for a sale, right? Creating that correct infrastructure, stepping away from it. This is a big one that we work with people on, right? Like they don't necessarily want to sell. They don't necessarily want to scale it to the masses or look for investors. Like they just want to have a business that can run without their day-to-day involvement so that they can step away for a sabbatical or be able to have a flexible schedule to take the kids to, kindergarten and to take them to school and to sports without the business interfering with that. That could take you, we typically work with clients anywhere from 18 months to 4 years, right? Just depending on where you are now and the structure of the business. And again, something like secession planning, that can take multiple years to get the business in a place to identify and develop a successor and develop the infrastructure and the systems that support a successor. So these are things that we want to actually be thinking of from day one. But if you haven't been thinking about it from day one, which, surprise, surprise, most of us aren't, okay? Most of us are just like, let me get this thing off the ground and let's have it make some money and maybe get us away out of a job or help support our family. We're not actively thinking about like, well, what do I want it to do for me in 5, 10, 20 years? And that's the ideal time to start thinking about it. Day one, what is the plan for this thing? How do I develop this thing into an asset, right? Because your business is not a huge asset to you or to anybody else in your life if you cannot step away from it, right? If it needs you to continue to function, to continue to run, to continue to generate revenue, to continue to grow, then it is actually a liability for everybody else in your life, right? And so if we're trying to really build a true asset for ourselves and for our family and for our generational wealth that we want to be building, then we want to be thinking about this earlier on, not when it's time to do the exit, not when it's 6 months from the exit, not when it's, oh shoot, like I need to retire and I haven't really thought about what's the plan, right? But if you haven't started from day one, the second best time to start thinking about it is now, right? What's that saying? Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is now. It's today. Okay. So I want you to start thinking about this today. What is my actual quote unquote exit plan with all of those different variations of an exit? You are not boxed into selling the business. You are creating optionality for yourself by doing this work, because whether you're planning to scale it, sell it, step away from it, or secession plan it, the work is the same when it comes to the operation, right? When it comes to the operation, we have to remove owner dependency to do any one of those things. So I want you to join the session. If you're live with me today on the podcast, then you can come live today and we can have discussions around this, because I want to hear your questions. I want to hear your challenges. I want to hear what's coming up for you, because a lot of stuff comes up in our heads when we start thinking about this. And then I want to help you reverse engineer it. Okay, here's my plan. How do I actually start step one, right? Like what is step one of making that happen? So level11leaders.com/OOO. And again, if you're listening to this later on, watch the replay and then send me a message. Send me a message what came up for you, because I will answer you, right? Because even the shortest one of these options, it takes years, right? So it's like we have to start doing this work. We have to start thinking about these things so that we can create a true asset for ourselves and for our lives and for our families and for our options if something happens. Because best case scenario is that you're planning for your exit and you have all the time in the world to get ready for it and to make it happen. More likely scenario is that, I don't know the exact percent, but the majority of times when I'm working with people, they're exiting, stepping away because of a health issue, whether it's them or someone else in their life, okay, that they want to be able to be present for, that they want to be able to support, that they want to make sure that they don't regret not being able to be there because of the business, whether that's a maternity leave, a paternity leave, a parental, figure having later in life health issues, whether that's yourself dealing with things. So I'm going to tell you this one story before we wrap it up. So years ago, when I was, this was like early on in the Clockwork book launch days, I had someone reach out to me and we got on a phone call because he owned a dental practice for the majority of his life, right? He was a dentist and he knew that he wanted to exit that business because it was taking a lot of his time and he wanted to retire. And so he opted for a sale as his point of exit for that business, right? He sold the business, and the way that you typically do that in a medical practice is by selling to another practitioner. You sell to another dentist, they take over the book of business, the building and the team and all of that, right? And you exit for a financial amount of money. So he did that successfully, but he still wanted a way to generate revenue. He still wanted to, stay sharp and do something with his mind and with his time. He was always ambitious and entrepreneurial. And so he started a dog food review website. And it actually took off. It was very successful for him. This is what he was sharing with me on our phone call. And he was happy about all of that success, but he was actually working more hours with the dog food review website than he was in the dental practice. So that was problem number one, numero uno, right? He's like, I, quit the dental practice to spend more time with my wife, have more hobbies, and now I'm working more than ever. So that's a problem. And the other problem is that I'm getting up there in age, and I just have these fears that I'm going to pass away, and this business is not going to be an asset for my significant other, for my wife. It's actually going to be a huge liability for her. And those are the words that he used. He was like, this is going to be a huge liability for her, because she doesn't know how to run it. She doesn't know how to grow it. She doesn't even know how to dissolve it, to be honest, right? It's going to be this monster of a thing that it becomes a headache for her. And that's the last thing that I want to do to her after I pass. And so he was like, what I need to do is get this thing to a point where it can run without me. I need team. I need systems. Right now, everything is done and run by me. I'm the only one who knows how to do anything here. And yes, it's financially providing for us. It was a very successful 7-figure business. But it was a huge liability to his lifestyle and to his partner. And it wasn't an asset if he wasn't around. And so he committed to doing the work, to getting it to a point, not just for himself, but for his family, to turn this thing that he built into an asset. And that is what I want you to do. That's what I want to encourage you to do, is to think about this for yourself, right? You get to choose, like, with intentionality, how much involvement you want in your business. But I want you to be thinking about the insurance plan for your business. The insurance plan is making sure you're not involved in the growth, the running of, the revenue, the profitability. Like, if I step out, do all of those things disappear? So think about that. Think about which one of these exits is really a desire for me, right? These 24 different exits. You can go to the post, or more, like, go to the post. You can review the exits. I'll link the post in the show notes as well. But more than anything, I want you to join me for a live conversation about this stuff, because what was most evident and valuable to me leaving the New York City Tech Week event that I was speaking at is that we're not having these conversations enough. We are shying away from them. We're avoiding them. We're unsure how to even have them. We're unsure who to even talk about these things with. And I want to hold the space for you to start having this conversation now, because the women that left that room at New York City Tech Week were like, wow, I've never had this type of conversation. You got me to think about my business in so many different ways that I've never thought about before. Thinking about how to make it even more valuable for myself and for the right goals that I have for the personalized goals that I have for myself. And just things that I've never really thought of that are really confronting sometimes, of like, who am I without my business? And am I just doing this work and staying attached to a lot of the doing because it feeds this ego, or it feeds an emotional need that I have that I'm not getting anywhere else, right? And it's like, okay, these are the things that we need to talk about, because these are the things that are stopping you from doing the actual operational work to get it to a point where it can run without you. So would love to host you in this room. Again, go to level11leaders.com/OOO, because we're going to be talking about this conversation of how to get you out of office, right? How to plan for an out of office type of business. So thank you for engaging in this conversation. Thank you for being someone who wants to think about these things, who wants to think about, how do I become a better leader for my business by confronting the hard stuff, right? So I hope to see you in the room. And either way, I'll see you next week.